Ooh, this is Ryan. Hi, this is Riffing with Ryan, or was Riffing with Ryan. This space now, I'm Ryan Erickson, just in case you didn't know that. I want to create this thing called the music of work and bringing the humanistic from the mechanistic and from the mechanical to the musical in the world of work. And who better today to help me with that and to hopefully help you with that is a gentleman who I met through a common connection through Bowling Green State University, my alma mater, and the Collaborative Change Library, and this gentleman's contribution to it. And this gentleman depersonalizes him too much. I will bring Mr. Tenneson Woolf onto the stage. Hello.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, so would you please do me the honor of saying a bit about who you are and your inquiry into this fantastic blue marble?
That's good. Well, I love all of those invitations, Ryan. So I'll say a few things. Thanks for inviting. Thanks for welcoming. Thanks for just the tone that you come in with. It makes me sit in my regular old chair in my office here and feel sort of some excitement and delight, like things feel a little shimmery for me. So I'll say a few things about who I am that are very much in connection with what you just said, because I am a person that I think is trying to pay attention to my own emotional field, which sounds really super serious, but it's like legitimizing intuition and emotion and the ways that that dances between us or riffs between us, and the us can be, the big us, or sometimes it's a little one-on-one kind of thing. So I'm a person that pays attention to that, and I suppose delights in that. I think I'm a person that wants to bring a little more joy into working with groups, and the particular kind of joy that comes with, oh gosh, we're in real work, or we're in real inquiry, or we're in real rolling up our sleeves, or we're in real mystery with one another. Those are all things that I like. So I'm just appreciating the naming, the riffing that you're speaking about, riffing with Ryan. It's fun to be in the alliteration, talking with Tennyson. I don't know what else to play with that, right? And I'm a person that loves to collage. Like when I think of the figurative collaging, Ryan, I'm a person that like sees different ideas and loves to connect them, and loves to connect them in ways that maybe they haven't been connected before. There is something fun about that. And I kind of take it as my job, and many of us, our jobs as human beings, is to sort of keep collaging things in ways that maybe make some sense, maybe bring some joy, maybe do some good things. So I love in your language, you describing this program, you wanted to create the music of work. Those are like deep hungers in me. We want to create things. And every now and then we get to be with people where we just start doing that, or it starts creating us. I love that feeling. So all of that, but I know you asked the question, like, who are you on this, blue marble planet and everything?
Yeah, not everybody in my circle knows you, but my circle, yeah, blah, blah, blah.
So I'm Tennyson, and I'm all of those things real time with you. And in addition to all of that, I live in the United States. I live in Utah. I'm from Canada originally. I've worked as a facilitator and group process person for the last 30 years. Lots of things that you and I share, Ryan. Lots of open space, lots of world cafes. So, I think of my professional work and passion, or a good hunk of my passion in the world, is about how to be well with groups and help groups go well together with the things that they care about. And, believing inherently that there's a few things, I'm being a little facetious, there's a few things outside of the box that that matter, like how we experiment with one another, how we welcome the heart of things together, the poetry of things together, the music of things together, the artistry of things together. I think there's a ton of good shit that we can do. And I kind of contribute my professional life and my personal life that way. That's one layer of intro. Hi.
Hi, that is fantastic. Hello. And the genesis of my, so I need to spend more time with this gentle, not gentle, occasionally poetry person,
Yeah.
in dance and art,
Beautiful.
in that.
Huh.
The specific thing, whether we stay with it or not, you mentioned about bringing something different, and bringing that there was this idea of heartlessness in this, in the world of work, and that this idea of work and stuff, this slows down and kind of gums up the spirited nature, and I this word that came across my consciousness a few years ago is called kamiwaza. If you've heard of kamiwaza before, it's this Japanese term that means divine work.
Nice.
And the idea of divinity and again authority, and like there's only one author, to this place, and whatever name you call this author, that's this infinite game that helps you and I write stories together and sing the songs together, and that stuff. Like immediately I go there because I want to go there for my history, right? I don't that I grew up in the Midwest, in Terre Haute, Indiana, West Terre Haute, actually, the folks across the river. We river rats of West Terre Haute.
Right. Yeah.
And in my pop is at art school, and we had all this stuff that poured into me coming up, as the musicians were the cool kids in my elementary school.
Nice.
And I didn't realize how weird that was.
Yeah.
And then that followed me. It's like, oh, so I want to be a jazz bass player. That's because that's the hard stuff. Was the hard stuff. It wasn't like doing school, like following the rules, but I was good at it. And so all this leads to I landed. So I went into music, and then came back around towards the end of my college years. Life happens, and when life happens, there's all talk about invitations. Every invitation is this place. What am I choosing? Fear? Am I choosing love? Am I choosing? What am I choosing? And so that love of music that took me into jazz school, and that stayed with me, so it went to sleep. And now coming back after some stuff, here I am telling my own story. Good Lord. This is
good. Please. I'm enjoying it.
So this jazz things happen. I'm like, oh, I want to be a jazz musician. Life happens. And then that love of music for me, it's okay. It's going to go to sleep for a while. And my hands are not going to be on the bass guitar or on my double bass or whatever instrument happens to be. And so that led me to a career in the world of traditional industrial Americanized global North blah 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 blah, blah stuff. And that's when you're not aware of that's a game, that there are different games to play. And because I was good at it, and and then I was outside of it for a while, and then now I'm in the game again for 25 years. 25 years. And seeing that, and there's always this little bit that said there's something wrong, something off about that world, and that there's something else wants to happen in this field. And so towards in 2019, and after some, I amicably I had a friendly divorce from IBM, after a time. So, and then I end up, I have cancer, right? So I went through cancer, came out of that, and they said, what's important, and this is kind of what you talked about. What's important is this moment, and that this moment of us, this, now we are really a we. Now you and me in this place, agreeing to be here at this time, and this time it will vanish in a few minutes, hopefully quite a few minutes, and then but this magic will be viewable in the future, and then the nows that happen now. But this is important. In that world that kicked me out a couple times, that those signals of being kicked out of that game, I stop and realize that this is the game. This is the game that's worth playing, and it's the game of love. It's not the game of fear and all that stuff. And that is to say, how do folks like us survive? How do the heart, maybe more heartful than handful and mindful, and I want to survive, and I want to survive and play with folks like you and help others bring the music. And that's a lot about what I want.
Yay.
And so what? And I'm okay with being in silence and having it be live, and be witnessed. And I have hope. So I ask, and I'll make another invitation. If your work were a piece of music, what would that music sound like and feel like?
Oh, nice. Okay, I'll connect a few things in there and then maybe come back to that question, okay? Because one is, I think there is music in showing up with our stories. And you just did a version of that, Ryan, by taking a little, like a broad swath of time and saying, oh yeah, once upon a time, there was that IBM thing, friendly divorce. And oh yeah, once upon a time, there was that cancer. You just took a couple of big hunks and brought them forward into some sharing here. And it means a lot to me. When the game is love, that was your language. When the game is love, how can we not show up with more of our stories? And even further, know that this is where the bias comes in, right? Know that the story is actually part of the work. Like, that's what we're supposed to do with one another. And maybe there's some skill that goes with it. That's a contrast to the, wow, jeepers, it's sure getting personal here. We better get back to the real work. Well, wait a minute. That's a contrast to that when we say it's actually our most poignant stories that we need to share with one another, and grow the skill, grow the muscle that is able to associate those stories with the desires of today, right now, right here, with this group, this team, this community, this partner, this grandchild, any of those kind of things. So I think you're naming something. and you're doing something that, let me shift the language. Well, I think it's all language of the heart anyway, but in more explicitly, it's like the feeling in my heart as I listen to you, the real human in front of me, sharing some bits of that real story. That just it animates, it enlivens, as I feel my chest and feel my heart. So yay. I think that there's a few of us, Ryan, whose job, or maybe it's passion, or maybe it's calling for that matter, is to offer the kinds of translations, which sounds like a super cognitive term, but what the hey, let's play with it for a minute. Translate like these seemingly disconnected environments, music and leadership, or music and community, or that kind of stuff, love and leadership. I think that many of us are involved, and I'm interested in this. How do we connect these seemingly disconnected environments that just bring more integration, not less, or not more separation, that bring more holistic knowing, being, contributing, not less, or more of the fragmentation that can occur there, more of the just narrow laned, super fantastic brain stuff. There's so much for us to be in. So when I go back to music that you're asking about, because oh gosh, okay, so in the music world, I'm going to apologize, but not apologize. Okay.
Yeah, don't.
Because the apology is, music isn't really my art. I have a guitar that I've had for 40 years, and I pick it up in little, snippets of like 3 weeks in a row, playing every second day for a while, and my fingers hurt again. And yet, and it's not like I'm even playing specific things. I just like making the sound, the noise, the feeling of that, right? So I don't have disciplined musical artistry in me, but boy, I have love of participating, and that's true in voice. Like, I love it when somebody leads communal song and gives me a part that's simple enough that I can jump in with. Yeah, I love the artistry of poetry. You've mentioned this. This is more my lane when it comes to, a deliberate practice of artistry in the world. But music, I have this love. There's artists that I love. I love a James Taylor. I love a John Mayer, let's say, or I love that kind of instrumental guitar music. And I've been telling my sweetheart Dana, as we we've been in some playful conversations about, if you could ever come back for a day as another person, is there someone you would want to come back with? And mine is usually music. Like, I want to be that guitar player on the stage right now. So there's something in me that loves all of that. And maybe because it's always fun to play the nuance of the metaphor, I'm drawn to the music because it brings out this quality of resonance, or it brings out this quality of, ooh, let's play with some notes. You studied jazz music, so you've got a boatload of that in you. I love inviting something. You said this in the intro, something more than the mechanical into the day-to-day humaning that we do, that sometimes shows up as working with teams and communities and committees and all of those kinds of things. There's a bit. I'll stop there.
Yeah. Oof. And each time you speak, it sends me in like 10 different places. And
oh boy.
I'll connect it to this idea of the resonance, and that deep resonance, that's the literal somatic kind of, I feel the sound, even if you can't hear, even if you're that you are unable to, through whatever means, to hear the notes and hear the sounds of that. The resonance is there. That's universal. There is no language that I know of that can communicate emotion between those Homo sapiens of us, and the us that is the huge giant 8 billion us.
Yeah.
And more than any thinking language or anything like that, and or even signaling that kind of, but to sing a song together, and to even nothing, and you said, oh, I don't do this, oh, I have this guitar, but that's okay, because that's one kind of music, and that's the kind of music that I grew up with. It was inculcated into me, and the people like us do things like this in this neighborhood, that the cool kids were musicians, and that you know, I wanted to be a brain surgeon and a rock star like Buckaroo Banzai when I was growing up. and then so this idea of, okay, what if doing work was more like playing music?
Oh yeah.
And that brings in a lot of things about, okay, what's the instrument? What instrument am I playing? What instrument are you playing? What is, so where's what's the venue? What's happening? Who are we playing for? Why are we playing here? What's the tempo? What's the tune? And okay, so we're here, and now, okay, so I'm here with Tenneson, and we're counting off this tune. We're playing together. You're playing a riff, I'm playing a riff, and in jazz we're improvising together. And then this part of, okay, and I said it before, we're gonna play. We're here to play, and we're here to play. And we are not accountable to the senior vice president of music, right? Or the TPS reports have to be given, you know, out of the speed. So you're going to play this course, and I'm going to send the report up to the boss. No, we are, and if it's you, me, and 3, 4, that we are all accountable to each other, playing with each other, for each other, like, and that brings in some of the management theory that I wandered into about the difference between you know, Frederick Taylor and Mary Parker Follett, who was sadly, you know, disregarded because she was a woman in the early 20th century. But this is with us, for us, playing because we're here. I respect you, your humanity, and your mastery. And because we're here playing together and it's important, we're going to play and we're going to perform. We're going to love this joy. We're going to love each other, and we're going to give that love to those folks out there. And because we're doing that, and I need something from you. I respect you, and you're accountable to me. I'm accountable to you to give you everything I have, because I want it. Not because someone's telling me to do it for somebody else out there, or just going through the motions of writing this thing, and, you know, all right, I got to do this code, whatever, because no one but diving into your artistry like a musician does. And to say, I want to get better because I want to get better, because I am so passionate about this is the music. And if your instrument is this keyboard on, you know, the laptop keyboard, or your music is the numbers of reporting, of communicating to people, or whatever it is that the we that is 5 of us being with each other, giving love to one another, and love and joy, in joyful togetherness are 2 words that came together to me from a dear friend of mine, Marai Kila, in Germany, and her company is Joyful Together. I'm like, wow, what if it was seeking this liberation of the human spirit in pursuit of joyful togetherness in work and life? And I was like, oh my gosh, and what if that were our music? The music that we play with our instrument of self and our instrument of heart, mind, body, and spirit. Man, that's the game. That is this infinite game that lives in our communities, that lives in our groups, our small groups, our our little we's, our medium we's, our large we's, and our infinite we's.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Nice.
Yeah. So to move on to the next little tune here.
You need to know, by the way, you don't need to know, but I'm just sharing it with you right now, that I'm an easily earwormed person, which means in the context of music and song, like somebody walks by me and is humming a song, and then suddenly I'm humming that song, right? I'm one of those people. And that's true of ideas too. So in what you just shared, like there's a part of me that's just totally earwormed into that little tune you were singing. And it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, you know, I'll stay with that one for a little bit. I'll try to connect them.
So this brings a little bit of why did I call this the music of mischief?
Yeah, what a great title! Yay!
And this is my mom had dearly departed and passed. Mm-hmm. We're putting a book of poetry together for her celebration of life. Mm-hmm. And so poetry is big with me, as well as I know it's super big with you. Mm-hmm. So the poetry of the music of mischief, it started about, well, you're making some mischief kind of down in Texas. I heard you're making some mischief down there about challenging the norms of an academic institution. Gosh, though, talk about, and you think, oh, it's supposed to be this place of learning and all that stuff. There's so many bureaucratic muscles that have been built, and administrative muscles that have been built that kind of that teach the music out of people, and not just in the music program, but teach the spirit out of people in some ways. This industrialized thing, but you've endeavored to poke some balloons and pop and play a little bit of gestureness in there. That's my sense. And would you sing a little bit of that song for me?
I can. Yeah, I will. I will try to croon to that just a little bit. What I think where I start is something in me, in my search for how do I be honest, true to self, contributory to good things. It comes from some of those kinds of desires and questions. There are places where I realize, let's see what happens here. I feel like I'm a person that tries to find sweet spots. Like I want to be just serious enough and purposed enough. And sometimes like it's easy for me to get super serious. And, you know, I love dwelling in the high-minded principles and values of things. What are we really up to and who are we anyway? You know, that is deep work to do. And I love being able to like play in that space and all of that. And then I also need something that's like a little cheeky, you know, like a little playful, a little, you know, wink, wink kind of stuff. And mischief is one of those entry points for me, right? Whenever probably over the last 20 years or so, I just, somebody used it around me, you know, like, oh, I wonder what mischief we're going to be up to. I thought, man, I really like that question. I'm going to carry that with me. And I've used it 1,000 times in other places too, because it aligns with something in my belly. And I think it gives permission to people to say, oh gosh, you know, yes, we should be serious, but maybe mischief has just got some playfulness in it, you know, like it's not outright, I don't know what to call it here. The exaggerations would be outright degradation or something, blah, blah.
Malevolence.
Malevolence. Yeah, and mean and cruel-hearted and everything. Mischief is like, you know, mischief is what the grandparent does with the 5-year-old grandkid with a wink and says, don't tell your mom and dad that we're doing this, you know, but we're going to go do this.
Here's a piece of candy.
Mischief is appealing to me. And I use it a lot of places, including some design work for it's a faith community gathering that's coming up that I've been asked to co-lead on it. And the person that I'm at least working with part of it on, we're structuring some of those really basic conversations into more traditional conferencey format. And in this instance, like we'll give them some small partner conversations, and one of them is likely to be headlined with mischief. You know what? Some of the mischief you've been up to. I love what that phrase. You use that in your language as you're talking about your friend and colleague, the joyful together. We're liberating spirit, or we're liberating some more full humanity in there, and just guiding it a little bit, you know. Maybe that's the bridge into the work that you're talking about, because you're talking about a body of work that I've been doing over the last probably 5 years now. And my colleagues, my close colleagues on this one are Chris Corrigan and Caitlin Frost. I think you know of both of them.
Chris, I know, yeah.
Yeah.
Caitlin Frost, I don't know, so I would love to hear that.
We're good pals in all of that. And we were invited 5 or 6 years ago to come in and really do some art of hosting work with senior leadership. First, it was at the University of North Texas in Denton. And there was a person there who was, at that time, was the provost. Her name is Jennifer Cowley. And she sort of knew of the art of hosting and said, would you guys come in, and what would it look like to do this? And so we started into something and got to do 3 or 4 different 3-4 day events with those people and pretty much their senior leadership. Well, I'm just going to transition the story and fast forward it, because the one that you're referencing is another university in Texas, the University of Texas at Arlington, where Jennifer Cowley, Dr. Jennifer Cowley, became president 2 years ago now, I think it was. Yeah. So she's in the most senior leadership, right? And she sort of brought us along and said, now we're going to do this at the University of Texas in Arlington. Well, Jennifer is all credit to her. What a smart, sharp, intelligent human doing good things in a context that, as the story goes, was pretty authoritarian prior to her arrival. So they had a few key figures that were that way. And all of the things that grow or don't grow in relationships when things are so authoritarian, and then you get things like blame, and you get things like shame, and you get things like, performance rather than presence. Jennifer was a person that just recognized right away, oh gosh, my leadership platform needs to be something different, and I want it to be something different. That's Jennifer speaking. And so she invited all of the relational to show up. So, we've been down 2 or 3 times now to work with the utmost senior staff, faculty within the University of Texas system. We usually get like 35 or 40 people that journey together and then have a little cohort time together. And I think we're on our 3rd or 4th cohort now with them. And it's a similar thing, Ryan. Like, this is a serious job. We're supposed to be really serious, and we're helping to change the culture of who they are. But Jennifer's a person that just jumps onto the language of how we're going to do things must have a quality of cooperation together, and some of those are just talking points that you hear a lot of. I think she really embodies more of it. So, we've done these 3-4 day things, 3-day things with them. And it means that we ask them serious questions. And sometimes we ask them some pretty cheeky mischief questions. And it comes from a premise, like a real serious premise, that if we show up more whole with one another, not to entertain each other, just more whole, like you're real, one of the exercises we do is, they're standing up and they're milling about the room, and find a partner. And then we invite them to tell a story of when they've experienced good leadership. And then you mix the little 2-minute speed date kind of thing. And then you mix the partners and you come back again. And it's like, tell a story of your good leadership. Great. Mix the partners again. Another speed date coming up. Tell a story of when somebody else really sucked with their leadership. And then another partner is like, oh, and now tell a story of a time when you sucked at your leadership, and it just invites them into an honesty. Yeah. I think there is mischief involved in that because it's outside of the lane of what they normally would expect. The fact that we have them interacting that way in the first place has some inherent mischief in it, because so many of those things, as you know, are like come into a room and listen to the person at the podium, and you'll be lucky if you interact with 2 people. We flip that on its head and say, no, we're going to interact a bunch here and give you questions that range from the deeply wise to the slightly mischievous, because I think it does good things. That's some of that story.
So this leads me to a place where I'm inclined to go, where I usually go at the end of a conversation, but
Okay.
I want to go here now and see where it goes with it. So there are a couple things. Talking about this kind of mischievous conversation that you invite into this discomfort and do the deep questions, and get into that deep work. And the kind of question, so I'm thinking about what kind of event would really kind of move the needle in some way, and what kind of question. I think danger. I think this. So when we're talking about, and so what is the risk of harm from this conversation?
Sure.
What am I risking in vulnerability? Okay, I'm vulnerability. What am I vulnerable to? What is the danger of being mischievous or saying something that and again in the university environment, there's a lot of noise about what the codes of conduct are, and these are the things you can talk about. These are the things these are the things you must not talk about, or else, right? And if you're known to talk about those things, then that's a risk of othering. That's a risk of being outcast, and all this reputational risk. But I really think that those conversations, those dangerous conversations, those are the ones that really challenge folks in private. And this is not like a public thing. This has to be a private, strong space that I want to share my curiosity with you about this question that I couldn't ask in public, but I want to ask you because we're here and we're being human together. And that's how that's the why question, because I think those kinds of conversations kind of level up. But then who really wants to have them, and who will admit to wanting to have them,
right? And you've been in a few of those places, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. So what, and when does mischief become danger? When does mischief get risky?
Okay, so we're playing. If I follow my belly, which I am wont to do,
please,
then there's something to be real about when it comes to danger. Like, don't touch the hot stove, you're going to burn. Don't drive over the cliff. I think sometimes we're overusing the concept of danger. And if people start to feel slightly uncomfortable equating that with, I'm now driving off the cliff, like that's for those who work in the field of traumatic informed participation and things like that, there are important things to pay attention to there. I sometimes wonder if there's just a little overdoing of that. That is not meant to be insensitive to the real dangers that people either encounter or perceive that they are encountering. I think the other part that I want to put in, so that's sort of park it. And I know that that's sort of a sensitive territory. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like whenever I'm showing up in a group, and if I'm intending to be mischief with the best of intentions, I don't want to feel like I'm just being an asshole. Yeah. So I'm trying to read, or I'm trying to ground myself in some of the deeper values. Why are we having this difficult conversation? It's not because we just want to jack up the adrenaline in the room. It's because I think we're trying to grow a quality of connection and wisdom together. So there's always some, I think there's some meta story that is really important to come back to many times. A lot of things are dangerous. Life is dangerous. It's dangerous to get out of bed. It's dangerous to leave your house in the morning. And we know, of course, there are a gazillion examples of what has happened or what can happen. How we, any of us, exist in our relationship with our own relationship to what is danger or what is uncomfortable or what is pushing an edge or pushing an envelope. I think all of that matters. So maybe the point of naming that, Ryan, is if we're going to be in the deep work together, it requires some level of commitment to the deep work individually too. We cannot go to some of those places if we haven't done some of our deep inner work, or if life hasn't brought us some of that deep inner work. So, yeah, containers matter a lot. It's not perfect, but I think it says something to people in our field and maybe more generally leadership fields. If you're intending to take on the difficult things, you must give attention to the quality of that relational container with one another. So for me, let me pull it down because, you know, in the example of the Texas University people, it's true that we invoke and invite a pretty deep field of learning there. But people are not showing up for the personal retreat. You know, this is not 5 days of meditation and some of that deeper internal work. Now, we touch those things because I think we're supposed to in those places. We're supposed to point just a little bit. And usually in a group of 30 or 35, there's going to be 5, 6, or 7 that are already in that deep inner work. And they just riff off of it. They just play off of it. Yummy, right? It matters to create containers. And so I find that in, let's say, all of the work that I'm involved in when I get to be facilitator Tenneson, and who brings a little poetry along the way that maybe creates some of that good container also, we're starting with the relational. We're so often inviting people to bring an object that means something to them in the best of their leadership. Now tell us a little story, or tell your neighbor a little story. And then sometimes we do those speed date questions. What are you excited about in being here? Is there anything you're nervous about in being here? Like, we're just giving a lot of permission and an early encounter to interact with one another. There's some, as you know, there's some like deep principles that go with things like that. One of them for me is, it comes really, or I associate it with Christina Baldwin's Circle Way. Christina Baldwin is, you can't hate someone whose story you know, or the shortest distance between two people is a story. Well, if we're going to do the deep hard work, sometimes I think we need the spaces and the, you know, the process methodologies that enable us to create the relationships to be in those things. That's been my experience, and it's been my, you know, my orientation to how do we pick up the dangerous things.
Yeah.
Let me pause there. I'd love to hear what you're stirring on.
Something really just hit my tear duct, my heart there. Is something about, how can we hate someone whose story we know? And how can we, that when you and I are the we that is here, how can I hold you in contempt if I'm looking into your eyes?
Sure.
And I am feeling the warmth of your breath, and I'm sensing that, and you're sharing. And if, again, this is the strength of a very private space. And if you have that intimate space that's not recorded or monitored or anything like that, when I am with you and deeply with you and looking at you, how can I do anything but be with you and fall in love with your story?
Yeah.
And also, that's the words that come that when I think about this is, what is the quality that's needed in that strong, that strong feels like, I mean, it's a good word because it's a space that could really hold, and this private space it really holds. And what is it to show grace?
Yeah.
And I want to hear the mistakes you make.
Mhm.
And I'm okay with you making mistakes and saying words that I don't want to hear,
Right.
because I know you're saying them from your heart, and I can see that in you. And maybe we'll get pokey with each other or whatever, but I am with you here.
Yeah.
And maybe that strong space. Okay, there's it's not like the law of 2 feet, in open space. There's a law of mobility, and that there's there's a maybe a corollary to that law. It's the law of sitting in discomfort, or this that sit longer than you. And I mean, there's some principle.
Right.
There's some principle that, not a law of obligation, because I don't want to be obligated to be here with you,
Yeah.
but that the law of bonding or something like that, that we are bound in this space of grace.
Interesting. Yeah, stick with the bounding, actually. Like, that's got a fair amount of potentially restrictive tone in it. But that's a pretty compelling thing. Whatever your comfort zone is, stay just a little bit more, please. It doesn't force anybody, but it does. It like animates and lifts up the principle. You might find something in the mystery, and that's not a cute principle. Like, to me, this is badass, deep humaning kind of principle that we are probably relearning. Many of us are relearning together.
This is the second time I've heard you use the word humaning, this verb of humaning, and I really dig it. Um, and that brings me that there's a practice that I talk about. I so want to have this be realized somewhere, and this is part of the whole. What happened is the Purple Squirrel Cafe, that I wanted to do that was this that is based on this practice that's called not othering.
Yeah.
This othering is what happens. It's togethering,
Yeah.
and that using together, like we are togethering to do humaning together. And
What a
man,
great
that's new.
sentence.
That's new, right?
Yeah.
This is the poetry there. But the specifics of the idea is that you and I, let's say you and I come from a different ideological space, right? I mean, that's most common, the red
Sure.
and the blue, the whatever. But I know you. I have spent time with you. And maybe I'm related to you, or I've lived next door to you for a long time, or whatever it is. Why are we that you and I, that we want to solve a particular issue, and we don't see it
Mhm.
the same. And yet, like and trust me, even though I come from this different place.
Mhm.
And what if, as a result of that trust bridge
Mhm.
between you and I, that there are others who you trust, who are kind of maybe a little bit farther on the other side of that Overton window than I am,
Mhm.
in that because they trust you and like you and know you, and you trust and like and know me, that we can work together. We can make a kind of music together.
Mhm.
And that will be the same for my side of
Mhm.
that. So in this kind of slow, small growth of building this trust together, to a
Mhm.
coming together of, and how do you cultivate that grace and curiosity?
Yeah.
And that's this. Okay, so that's a theory, maybe an idea
Yeah.
that I'm trying to bring together virtually with some folks, and maybe it's. But what if there was more togathering than othering?
Yeah.
How might that change the valence of how governance happens,
Yeah.
how work happens, how humaning
Mm.
happens?
Can I jump in?
Please.
Humaning is one that sticks with me. My daily blog that I write, which is kind of like a journal in public, is called Human to Human. So I've for a long time, I just felt like, well, that speaks truth to me. And often I find myself in workshops that I'm facilitating. I'll say some of the things that are on the program and the brochure and, the conference materials. And I'll say, and on the other hand, I think we're just trying to be good humans with one another. Like that's part of that sort of mischievous little, let me insert another narrative because, and in the story I tell myself, Ryan, I'm saying, I think this narrative already lives in you. And you know that we need to do this. So, I'm daring to call out something that I think already exists that way. I love the humaning piece of that. I think we need to be asking questions like you're saying. And sometimes it takes a simple juxtaposition so that it can land, because we can think all kinds of complicated thoughts and, really intricate models and everything. But sometimes it needs a question like, what if we gave ourselves permission to do more togethering than othering? That is the wicked premise of this conference, gathering, meeting, whatever it is, right? Like those things need to be spoken. That's part of what I've learned. And then it raises the question for me of, okay, cool, because that's a great value too. We can get on board with togethering in a lot of ways. It's like the question that comes from me is, so what does togethering come from? And then we start exploring things like, well, shit, some story might help us. Some circle might help us. Yeah. And when I go even a layer underneath that, Ryan, which I think is some of the deep work that some of us are in these days, how do you get so that you can fall in love with somebody else's story? Well, okay, complicated question. But I think a part of it is, can you fall in love with your own story? Your own story, which includes for me, and this is the language I use, my story includes marriage. My story includes divorce. My story includes, and you can name a number of things, which include the painful sorrow, a loss of a parent, a loss of a spouse. I think when we can it seems like there's a relationship there. The more we can fall in love with our own stories, I think increases the chance that we can fall in love with the unfinished, in progress, sometimes messy stories that others are living. And when it comes to difference, let's see, I'll bring it back to me. Sometimes I'm an asshole. And sometimes my friends might call me on that. Or sometimes you're an asshole. Like when we can develop the foundation that goes, that isn't dismissive that way. Oh man, there's some assholing going on here. So, I think we might be in a different kind of conversation here. When the baseline is the game that is love, like you've been naming here, then I don't know if it really fixes things, but maybe it creates a more fertile garden so that we can be in those together. And any of the times, there's two things. Any of the times that I've been invited to host conversations on race and equity and diversity, that's loaded. Yeah. And there's so much that won't get fixed in those conversations. But I'm glad that I've had a few experiences where I feel like we just move the needle a bit. Mm-hmm. And because we create a space and a format to talk as honestly as we can about maybe what's clear in this topic, what's challenging and confusing in this topic, what helps us in our circumstance this week, next month, those kind of things. The part of me that, I have the part of me that wants to wave a magic wand. Sure. And of course, but sometimes I think this is the skill of some of us who have been around the block a time or two, is to say, we're just trying to, almost I don't like the language, install invite a little bit of hopeful learning and connection and energy around this. There was one other piece. This goes back to Chris Corrigan, actually, because I read it on his blog yesterday or earlier this week. And he was referencing a 20 years ago learning that we were both part of. But he was naming a guy, Dr. Mark Jones, who was in a Practice for Peace community, I think it was called. And he was talking about how every human being in the world, here's the premise, wants to be heard, wants to be seen, and wants to be loved. Hizzled, HSL. And when those don't happen, then crazy things start to happen. When we're not heard, we get loud. When we're not seen, we do things to be seen, sometimes obscene things to be seen. And when we're not loved, boy, toxicity grows. So all of those things are in play. That's highfalutin in a way, like I'm, the poetic heart in me and the badass facilitator in me also grabs onto something like that and says, at least as part of our journey together, can we hold a storyline like this too? I think that feeds back into what is the music we might make here? What is the magic we might make here? We need all these traditional descriptions, but we also need those too to speak to, more of the heart. That's a lot. I better stop.
Yeah. In this idea, there's something because I'm musical and to add, and that to be heard, there is something that's on the other side of that, right? Is the listening.
Yeah.
Deep, attentive, the exquisite attention that I have to listen to you, to be present to you. I mean, that presence, you and I, the folks in this practice use presence a lot. It's presencing, social presencing. But the core of this presence, I am here with you. I am watching you. I am listening to you. I am intent. I have the most curiosity I could possibly have for you. And how can I hold you in contempt when the curiosity is so deep? And I'm intentionally being, that. Ooh, that's, and I'm contempt and curiosity. That bit I'm borrowing that from Caitlin Walker. Thank you, Caitlin, in Clean Language. But that book, that dichotomy, or whatever is that polarity, right? The polarity of contempt and curiosity. And this is the togethering. I'm deeply listening to you. You're telling me the story. It's because I listen to it. I let it seep into me and do things in me that love as challenge, right? That's asking something of me, to be with you, to listen. So don't forget that. Just, and I need you to listen to me. I need you to listen to me. I need this. Yeah. And to be with someone's need and someone's, and what that's this magic. This is, and okay, so I'll go into the poetry that I bring. So I have this mantra that came, that part that when this started to happen for me after cancer, when I came back into the world, I said, I'm going to connect with whoever I can connect with. Who cares what they can do for me or what I can do for them? I'm gonna navigate with this. And someone said to me in this process, Ryan, what if your job was just to create beauty? To create beauty. I'm like, okay, that's a big job. It's hard to eat and pay the rent with creating beauty necessarily, but okay, I'll take that. And it's part of that. The invitation to me to do that came this mantra that I use. It's like, with humble grace and breathless awe, I stand in reverence of the beautiful mystery of the human spirit. Every day, man. Every day I say that to myself. Okay, so this is what's keeping me here. This mystery, this magic, this ephemeral that may happen or not happen. And what does that drive us to do for others? To talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, all this kind of stuff that gets so pointy and so valent and idealized and this is like, why are you talking about that? I watch the news this way, and this news tells me to feel like this news tells me to feel like that, and how dare you challenge my story? How dare you? And that how dare you, where does that come from, man?
Yeah.
And just how does it, and this is okay, so maybe the how dare you conversations are out here, but to be daring, to be that I think is this, where is that balance of the daring, and that allows this little bonding to happen, and so the bridging and the bonding and the beautiful, the divine beauty and sacred mystery of the human spirit. And that's this rolling marble at light speed is all about.
Indeed. And now we're back to magic and music and mischief.
Indeed. Oh, and mastery. Mastery is another one.
Awesome. And why? What has you putting that in that little group?
A starts with M.
Yeah.
So that's
got that.
There's that, but this mastering of self and the musical mastery. Okay, so this is part of bringing that, what to be. If my practice, my instrument is facilitation, right? My practice is that. What does it take to be a master of that, and to desire that, and to make music with that, with whoever I'm with that, and to want to do it better and better and better, and this is where the jazz comes in. It's like, and jazz musicians, right? That if you're gonna play if you're gonna play jazz, if you're gonna improvise the American Songbook or improvise, or this is like, okay, if you're in the Keith Jarrett trio, okay, you've got this Mount Rushmore piano player, Jack DeJohnette, this Mount Rushmore drummer, and Gary Peacock, who may not everybody knows, but those three guys together, when we talked about that respect for each other's mastery, oh man, there's how much mastery is there. And then how creative are you with that? And this is awesome. This is the mastery that transcends your fingers, it transcends that. And what is the conversational mastery? How do we make that conversational jazz? What's the Keith Jarrett trio of conversation?
Awesome.
And
awesome questions.
And so those are and who are the masters? How do we find them? How might we, right? That lovely little HMW that always gets put on. How might we be the invitation to master conversation? I don't know. That's where the letter M came from, because I love that topic.
Excellent. Well, that's marvelous. I'll play with some other M's then. I think you're naming such a deep layer, Ryan, and it's part of why I felt excited to get to spend this little chunk of time together. I think there are many of us, or a few of us, I don't know what the number is. I know it's in my heart that I feel like we're evolving the point of being together. In its super oversimplified way, it is something about from the mechanical to the organic and some other expressions that are interesting there. But I carry a story in me that says, even with really difficult things, if you can be honest about it, and I don't even know what that means, honest with self is a big deal. So there's a lot of layers that go into that. But if you can, like, there is a medium of honesty that I think signals something to people. When I show up, man, don't bullshit. I need to be honest with who I am and as focused on the purpose as I can that we've named. Like, the resonance of that, I think parallels, oh gosh, thinking out loud now, parallels the resonance of music. I like it is the frequency in the room of the music that's going to make me not be able to not dance or move my butt a little or something like that, right? And I want to think in a story that I both experience and want to like claim and invite is when in that conversational music also, it has something in it that has us, makes us unable to not move our butts, i.e. not contribute in some way to the inquiry that's there. I carry this story in me. People want to be connected. They want to learn and they want to do good shit in the world together on their teams or as a community or as a family, all of that. And I think a lot of us are just like bringing more of that story and tiny little tastes. One of my good colleagues and friends is a woman named Margaret Wheatley, and one of her recent books is called, what is it? Lost the title now, but it's right beside me, Restoring Sanity. And she talks about islands of sanity. So, Meg and her, she's turning 80 this week, by the way. So she's been around a bit.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But in her journey, she's gone from lots of consulting and teaching and all of that, and lots of large scale change efforts. And she's sort of, in her own truth telling way, brought it down to, look, I think what we can do is we can create these little pockets, these little islands. And it says something about how we do teams or, the large organization doesn't listen to us, but here we are. And I love my team. If we can, this is bouncing a bit, but if we are able to store the legitimacy of love amongst a group of people, damn, that's compelling work to me. And I don't find it difficult to connect that into what's that got to do with our job, our mandates, our things like that. There will always be room for love of self, each other, circumstance. Those are things that I feel like animate my musical ability in a group.
Well, in that metaphor is super salient, I think. In that, so why stop with the island? Why not build bridges and boats and travel between the islands and sing songs and light fires and signal to the other islands that I'm here. I am here and we are here. And you know what? And that the other part of that it came into this, I don't know what. So this also kind of, it gets back to talking about the mechanical and the mechanistic, but what gets in the way of a lot of those the working conversations, that we spend 2/3 of our time there, right? That this idea of performing for someone who I don't want to perform for, right? And being so instead of connecting with you across the water and rowing the bridge, building the bridge, rowing across the water, signaling to you, I'm required to put up a wall on the walled garden there, and say, hey, give me permission to do what I do, and instead of saying, hear me, hear me, see me. Hear me, see me, touch me, feel me. Yeah. And that is, and that I think is these are the big changes that the way that this top down stuff and the power over and that power over has gotten us into this awful mess. And this and in consumption, and I mean, I know there's near, but
you're dropping out a pile of it now.
but this idea of at all costs else, consume at all costs or else, and that just give a little bit of pause, a little bit of grace, and watch that say, no, the real place of organizational health, if we think about that, is not saying to this and saying to it's it's in what we just talked about for this time. It's about the
Beautiful.
love. It's about loving each other so we can love the folks who love us back and want to sing our songs and dance to our music and buy the t-shirts and subscribe to our Substack and Bandcamp and our YouTube channel, Riffing with Ryan. And that's there's so much work to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes, when I'm alone with my own heart,
Yeah.
and when I'm alone, I think there's so much to do, and who will, and this is who will trust me to do it. Who will again, I'm nearly crying on a live stream, and so who hires that guy? Well, I hope and I believe that there's someone who will value the humanity that that we're sharing and modeling here. And I hope that that will loosen the bricks and put a water hose in the mortar of these pyramids that bring us, that allow us to be in the sphere of that. So, oh man,
good.
At this moment, is there anything, any place that you wanted to go today that we have not yet gone?
Well, there's probably 14 connected places that would be fun to follow that we're going to need to, get a bigger boat or. So I don't think so for today, Ryan. I'm reaching the point where I'm going to need to transition also. But if what about you? Question back to you. Is there anything further that you feel you want or need to explore?
I think as we go back into our private spaces, negotiating with you when we can do this again. That's what I want to talk about.
Nice. I want to do
that. But as far as what to share here, we've gone so many places that when I listen to this again, I'll probably think of several places.
Of course.
I will want to go and to be with your poetry. I think just to thank you for being willing to show up here in this mischievous, unpredictable, malleable, place.
Yeah.
Purple place. It's purple down there.
Well, maybe as a closing word for me anyway, Ryan, I'll say thanks. It was easy to show up here, first of all. It was easy to say yes to the idea of showing up in the future. And it was easy to show up today on the Friday that started at 11 o'clock my time zone. It's easy to be in it. And part of what makes that easy, I think, is the language of the heart, or the medium of the heart, the currency of the heart, if you will. And all of that matters. And I think, I think you are well served. I feel that I am well served. Others are well served whenever we grow some of that clarity and courage that allows us to start speaking about things like music and magic and mischief and a few other M's that go with that, because we're really, daring to interrupt a much more narrowed storyline and restore it, I think, to something that, matches the dignity of who we are as human beings, or these incredible, complicated and complex associations of human beings. So I love it that lives in your heart. Thanks for calling that out in my heart. And I hope people who have been watching or listening later also, that they, that there's some good spark there. It's a treat to be able to have this kind of conversation. And included in this conversation, know that there's parts of like, well, how do I do that with this team next Monday? I'm so glad to be part of that field.
Well, let's allow the breeze to pass through this field, and I will I will wish those of you out there in whatever now and whatever place you happen to inhabit space and experience this loving moment between Tenneson and me in these 1 hour and 14 minutes and 24 seconds
Awesome.
Of this time.
Mm.
Thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention.
Mm.